Well, hey, as we continue this morning, I just want to draw your attention to that really smooth transition that we just did, practiced just this morning. My name is Topher again, and it's a pleasure to be with you as we continue this series where we're basically hearing stories from people in our own congregation about what does it mean when we take these concepts that we're learning each week? Right now, it's about the Sabbath. What does it take when we learn these things and when we try to apply them to our own lives? And I don't know about you, in my life, in the stories that I hear, often there's a little bit of mess that's there when that happens. And so this morning, we get to hear from Kristen Rainkamp, so I'd like to introduce her to you today. Many of you know her, and I just want to say a special thanks for stepping up. We had to call an audible as due to illness, the person who was going to be here this morning couldn't be here, and Kristen was willing to kind of step up on a moment's notice and move her story up a little bit. But I learned a little bit about Kristen. She's been married to her husband, Craig, for 35 years. They have two adult children, two grown children, Nick, who's 28, and Chris, who's 25. And Kristen began her career as a wastewater engineer. And then I learned she transitioned her career into a domestic engineer. And now she spends a lot of time volunteering in various aspects of the church. She enjoys being outside and cooking and travel, and especially planning travel. And little fun fact, Kristen and her two boys were all baptized right here at what was then First Presbyterian Church in 2001. The three of them baptized on the same day, September 2001. Something else happened that month that was noteworthy, but she was baptized at that point. So let me turn the lights to you, I suppose, and just ask you, why is it that you started practicing Sabbath?
Well, I'd never had a Sabbath practice before, and I always wondered why we didn't study it or didn't hear about it in church, but started with a call from the Common Space groups, and I guess that was this fall. So didn't know anything about it, but decided to jump on in.
Yeah, and so maybe share a little bit about what that looks like for you. What's been your Sabbath routine, kind of the do's and don'ts in the Christian Rainkamp world?
So I didn't have any rules. I didn't grow up with the do's or don'ts, so my husband told me my first rule was to put away my cell phone, which was a good thing, which is hard to do. So what else do I do? Something else that I do is I have this pad of paper that I leave on the counter, and when thoughts come into my head, I don't know if anyone else has 20 things in their head at the same time, I write them down. So I confess this morning there's already 5 things on that pad of paper before I left the house.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that maybe you started at a particular time, but you ended up shifting that. So what's the time block look like for you?
I started Sunday, but then I kind of got squirrely on Sunday nights because I like to plan and I didn't have time. So I went from maybe mealtime, we said sundown, Saturday to Sunday, and that's good. And then I have time to think Sunday night about Monday.
Okay, so fall, that was probably September, October when you started.
Yeah.
What have you learned along the way? Kind of what's been the goodness that you've seen, and share with us challenges that you've bumped up against.
Yeah. So I think the good thing is slowing my mind down. I've been able to spend time with God. So think about those things that we hear about on Sundays, or maybe you study about, or maybe a conflict you've had during the week, that it gives me time to think about it rather than just brushing it under the rug and moving on. So I tend to like to do that when I walk. Sometimes Craig and I will go out alone. We'll go out by ourselves or sometimes alone. But just like pondering deeply about things, and I had lost that skill. So that was good.
Yeah, and you had mentioned a couple of other things. So there's kind of that time to contemplate. Anything else that comes up that's been particularly, you think, helpful for you?
I think the refreshment has been surprising, not just the body refreshment, but the mind and the soul refreshment. I feel different on Mondays. There's kind of a lightness. So I think you were getting at the other thing, that I felt some different sparks of joy during the week, and I don't quite know what that is, but they popped up in other times.
I know one of the challenges that a lot of us face, and you had mentioned this, is this idea of self-sufficiency, that it's all on me. Maybe, could you share a little bit about what you've learned about that?
I think that was the challenge, is you think about things, it comes to, at least when I grew up in my family, there was a high premium on self-sufficiency. So how much I want to do, so I have to keep going on Sunday or on the Sabbath because I have things to do and they must get done. But they don't, because God's enough and it's all right to not to do those.
I've kind of learned, if you're not getting a sense, Kristen has a lot of energy that comes out. If we think about kind of where you were and then where you are right now, you said something that was really interesting, and it was probably the first time I'd heard it, which is you sort of had this vision of what I need to be looking forward to in my Sabbath. Maybe share a little bit about that.
I guess there were two things. One is that we had talked about in our practice on the teaching, stopping, resting, and delighting. But we also talked about celebrating in community, and we've done a little bit of that, but I think that's something I want to do more of. And then I think what you meant, Topher, that I was thinking of is sometimes we ask, if people look at us, would they know we follow Jesus? Would they know we're Christians? And a lot of times I think the answer is no. So I'm wondering if our Sabbath practice, like mine and all of ours in community, will be like a window and a door that opens that people can ask and see something different. Maybe their curiosity will be aroused and to ask questions. Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up again this morning, maybe the final question would be, for somebody who's just getting started, what advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, I think it's been set up here before, just to do it, to try it, and to receive. I think often we live in ourselves and we want to do, but just to open and see like that rhythm that God has and just the goodness that he has for us.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you mentioned is just start. Right? It probably won't be perfect. We've heard how
I didn't start with the whole day. I started with a few hours, and then it felt bad, so I'm like, we'll try again next week. And
Yeah. So hey, I had a prop, and I realized I left it over here, so I'm going to awkwardly just walk over here real quick and grab this, and we can invite Emily up for her sermon. But as we wrap up, can we thank Kristen for being able to share her story here this morning? And it's kind of hidden on the website, but what I had wanted to show you is if you are looking to start and you're not exactly sure what to do, if you go to the page, and I'm going to forget what it's called. I think it's Made for Us is the title of the page. It's all about this Sabbath practice. You can download this worksheet, which is the Sabbath practice worksheet. It comes from a place called Practicing the Way. And they have 4 lessons and basically some exercises that you can go through, some ideas for how you could start small or how you could start big. And so I just encourage you, if you haven't and you're looking to get started, maybe check that out and see if there's something in there for you. And for one lucky person, I printed this out. If you want to grab me afterward, you can have this one. So thanks to Kristen and Emily.